How low can a punk get?
Alrighty, thanks for listening to the How Low Can a Punk Get podcast. What's happening? My name's Joel, I'm the host. If it's your first time listening to one of my podcasts, welcome. Thank you very much for checking it out. If you're a repeat offender, then thank you very much for coming back. I appreciate all the feedback I got from episode 1 with Todd from Propagandy. If you haven't pre-ordered their latest album, which got announced, I think, around the time of, or maybe a bit before, or maybe a bit after the first episode, then yeah, if you haven't done it, you should. If you're in Australia, you can get yours from artistfirst.com.au. They've still got a couple of copies kicking around at the time of this recording. Cool. So today's guest is Rayan, as you would have seen, legendary bass player in the Hard-Ons and Nunchucka Superfly. All-round nice human. All-round fantastic human, actually. I shouldn't say nice. Nice is an undersell. And I've actually spoken to him before as a part of the My Age podcast back in 2021 that I did. And the chat was that enjoyable that I decided that when I wanted to do this podcast, he was one of the first people on the list that I put down. Because we didn't really geek out too much on the bass stuff because I didn't want it to be too bass-centric with the My Age one. But because this is a bass player podcast, we geeked the fuck out, and then some. So if you haven't heard it and you like what you hear in this and you want to hear more about Ray, feel free. Just scroll back, I guess, or something. It should be on all the podcast platforms, possibly except for Spotify, because I may or may not have used licensed music that I was not meant to use, so they may or may not have deleted the episode. But if you've got one of the Apple phones, an iPhone, sorry, just use the Apple Podcast or whatever the fuck people use. Go for it. It should be there. If you're watching this on YouTube, apologies, there's no video. We recorded this the old school way, basically 2 mics, a Zoom recorder, a couple of chairs, face-to-face in Utopia Records. So apologies for that. As always, this episode is supported by the cool kids at Born Dry Beverages. Go check them out at borndry.com.au for some fucking fantastic Australian-made, canned, sparkling, and flavoured and still water. Yeah, so without further ado, here's my chat, Rayan. Alrighty, as you would have heard in the top of the introduction, we have a guy who's had a song written about him. A guy who's been doing it for, as it turns out, I just found out, 40 years, which is fucking mind-blowing. One of the most humble guys I think I've ever spoken to, because I spoke to him in the My Age podcast. Rayan, how you doing, mate?
Hello, Joel. How are you?
Very good. Very, very good. It's I'll set the scene, because you got to set the tone. We're sitting in Utopia, a stalwart of Australian heavy music. Would you agree?
Yes, it's a fantastic little shop.
Yep.
Yeah, so when fads come and go, we're still here.
You're still here.
Yeah. Heavy metal is
will never die.
Well, it's pretty much quarantine against trends.
Yep.
When people are saying, "Are you glad vinyl is back?" Well, for Utopia Records, vinyl was never gone away. You know? So.
Yep.
We're still selling Iron Maiden on picture disc, for example.
Yeah, of course you are. And the whole, hey, there's a CD revolution coming back. It's like, no, you never stopped.
Yeah, I think heavy metal is the true underground music, not punk.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can get into that. We will get into that.
Okay.
If that's cool.
Sure.
So, you are, for me, the loudest band I've ever seen. The first time I saw you guys was Irresponsathon.
Yes.
At the Hard-On in 97 or 98.
Yeah.
Frenzel's Festival.
Yeah, that was 98.
98, yeah.
That was Frenzel and the band called Nancy Vandal.
Nancy
as well.
Vandal.
Yeah.
I think Dog Boy played.
Yes.
Green Spoon. But
yeah, that's
you were
right.
on it, and it was like my first introduction and the fucking loudest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, good. Yeah, because we're a bit older than all those other bands.
Yep.
So we come from an era when volume, like, for example, Joel, somebody says, describe your sound. You say, it has this much mid-range, has all this bottom end here.
Yep.
And then you can describe that, but we also say, and we play at a certain volume as well.
Yep.
And things like tone, for example, sometimes you can't actually achieve that tone without the volume as well.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, yep.
So yeah.
So, what was? This is my icebreaker question.
Yes.
What was the first bass line you ever learned?
Okay, that's easy.
Go for it.
Yes, it's a band called Public Image Limited.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
the song's called
yeah.
Public Image.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's I think it's B to E, B to E, and then A to D. Yeah, B E, A D. Yeah. So it's just four notes.
And
yeah,
did Public Image were Public Image responsible for you picking up a bass, or did you learn that because it was easy to play?
No, it was I played it because it was so catchy.
Okay.
And I loved the song so much, and it was Public Image Limited were like a post-punk band with a lot of dub and reggae influence.
Yep.
So heaps of bottom ends. So bass was very prominent.
Okay.
So the bass lines were very prominent, and this song had a wicked bass sound, and
Yep.
It was really fun to play.
Yeah, cool.
And unlike some of the other songs, this one was really driven and punk sounding, and that appealed to me. But that was the first song that I ever played. Yeah. But it didn't make me pick up the bass, because I only picked up the bass because I wanted to join the Hard-Ons, and they were looking to get a bass player, and I wanted to be a guitar player.
Okay. Yeah.
But
necessity, just
that's right. So
yeah.
in my neighborhood, like Punch Bowl, Lakemba, and surrounds, it was like every kid had a guitar, and they were playing guitar, and I used to fool around with this acoustic guitar that a neighbor would lend me every now and then.
Yep.
And I really had this idea that I was going to be a lead guitar player in a band.
Okay.
So this would have been when I was like 15 or something, and I remember listening to the demo that Blackie played for me once, and it was like a Hard-Ons demo.
So before you go on, 40 years ago, how is he recording demos?
So he had his dad had a portable cassette player.
Okay.
So what he would do is put a blank cassette in and press play and record at the same time, and with a band playing. So he had this. He was in a band with the original drummer from the Hard-Ons, Kesh, and they had this band called the Dead Rats.
Okay.
And they had this demo, and they let me listen to it, and I was like completely like in awe of it, and I thought, far out, they've got a band together, and they're having heaps of fun. You know, they know how to play, and I'm like, I need to form my own band. So I wanted to form my own band playing lead guitar, and it was pretty hard, because I couldn't find anyone who wanted to play drums or bass. But I was bumping into all these other guitar players. And one day, Blakey said to me, you know, I'm not really happy with Peter Brainsgrove. Peter Brainsgrove was a friend of ours, and he was this incredibly nice guy. He's a friend of all of us. But he was not really a punk guy. He was more like a hard rock guy.
Okay.
So from memory, he loved things like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Ted Nugent. I remember he liked Ted Nugent, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I remember like he had like long flowing blonde hair, and he didn't look punk either. He looked like an old rocker guy.
Yeah.
But he was same age as us, you know, like 15. And
look like an old rocker at 15.
Yeah,
That's
but
awesome.
you know, like the classic rock look.
Yep.
Yeah, like kids in the late 70s and early 80s look like that, you know, who were into Kiss and Led Zeppelin. They, you know, long flowing hair. And Blackie said he was clashing with Peter on an ideological level. Like Peter was more into hard rock, and Blackie was completely in love with punk and post-punk.
Yep.
So his favourite bands were things like Public Image Limited, the Ramones, the Damned, the Stooges, Velvet Underground, and Peter's like Ted Nugent, Led Zeppelin. So I thought, there's my chance. So I got some money off my mum and I bought a bass guitar, and it was a Washburn Scavenger. Actually, it was a Washburn Vulture. It was a Vulture. It's the one with the neck through body construction.
Where'd you get it from?
Bankstown Rock Music.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know exactly where you mean. Yeah.
And
secondhand, was it?
Yeah, secondhand for $200.
That's wild.
Yeah, and the two people who used to own that place, Ken and Julie, they fixed me up. You know, you can have it for $200.
Yep.
And I took that home, and then I fooled around with it, and I thought, this can't be that hard. It's only got 4 strings.
Yeah.
And I put on the Public Image Limited song, and I played with it, played along to it and stuff.
Yep.
And I wanted to play like my heroes, which was like Ian Ryland from X. Do you remember that band X?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was in Rose Tattoo, and then he formed X, and he played all downstrokes, really heavy. And I also love Dee Dee, so he played all downstrokes.
Yep.
So I tried to play like that. And I rang Black and I said, hey, man, I bought a bass. And he's like, all right, okay, that's good to know. And then within a week, he rang me up because you want to join the Hard-Ons? Well, it wasn't the Hard-Ons at the time, it was Dead Rats. And I go, what about Peter, the current bass player? He goes, oh, we asked him to leave. And I go,
because of you?
Yeah.
Look out.
Yeah, and I said, was he pissed off? And like he said, yeah, he was a bit upset. And but Joel, we were all pretty good friends. I mean, to this day, Peter's my friend.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, we're all like in our late 50s, and we're all about to turn 60.
Yeah,
we're still friends. I mean, I don't see him every day, but you know, every now and then he'd make a comment on my Facebook page or something. He's the nicest guy you'd ever meet.
So you never thought to, like, was the band always going to be a 3-piece? Like, why did you not just go, I'll play other guitar?
Well, Blackie, the way Blackie's taken a hold of the music project, he basically wanted to play lead guitar. He wanted, so he saw the punk template, and I remember when he told me how awestruck he was when punk first hit. You know, like, I mean, the late 70s.
Yep.
He saw the Sex Pistols on TV, and you know, like Steve Jones, one guitar player in that band, and it's Steve.
Yeah.
The dominant driving force on guitar.
Doesn't need a second guitar.
No.
Yeah.
And Blackie wanted to be that guitar player.
Okay.
So he had this idea that, you know the punk guitar hero. You think of people like Steve Jones from Sex Pistols.
Yep.
And Brian from The Damned.
Yep.
You know, Ron Ashton from The Stooges.
Yep.
You know, the lone wolf guitar player.
Yeah.
You know, that menacing, brooding, tough guy.
Yep.
You know, and that was he wanted to be that guy. And
a sound big enough for two. Sound big enough for two kind of thing. Yeah.
That's a real dominant figure.
Yep.
And I think punk is a type of music where you can try and reach for that kind of thing.
Yep.
You know? I mean, there are parallels in rock music as well. Led Zeppelin, you know? That Jimmy Page.
That's true.
Jimi Hendrix experience. That one lone shark or wolf out there by themselves, rocking out and just being the alpha musician, you know?
Yep.
And I think he wants to be that guitar hero on stage. And I really thought that there was my chances were there as a bass player. So I wasn't interested in playing bass. I was interested in playing in a band.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Because the same thing happened with me. Yeah, it was a necessity thing.
Yeah, that's right. But then, it took me about 20 years, I suppose. No, I think it took about 10 to 15 years before I realised I actually enjoyed it.
That's a long ass time.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And so, what was your early days with your amps?
Well, I didn't know anything about them, so I was just borrowing them.
Okay.
Borrowing whatever my friends would loan me, or the first first lot of gigs, I would just hire something from Bankstown Rock Music.
Yep.
You know, any rig, and just make do with it. And then I actually went in there one day and said, I need a rig. It's got to be a loud rig that can compete with Blackie's volume and stuff.
Yep.
And so they gave me a PV, because apparently PVs are really simple to use.
Yeah.
Really good
Like a
price.
Mark 4 or something, or?
I can't remember what it was, but it was a combo.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, it was a combo. It had a big 15-inch Black Widow speaker stuck in it.
Okay, yeah. Like a TKO or something, yeah.
Something like that. It was a big 15-inch speaker.
Yeah, heavy.
Yeah, it was heavy, but it was a combo. Yeah. So
like weight-wise, I mean, heavy.
Yeah, it had a. I remember it had a
handle at the top,
a little strap on top, but that one 15-inch speaker seemed to be loud enough.
Okay.
Yeah, so a couple of years later, I bought a Serwin Vega 15-inch speaker, and I would run that out as well.
Days you change it out.
Yeah,
kind of
so I had two 15s.
Yep.
So it was like a proper rig, but it was loud enough. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But that was my first amp, and it was certainly loud enough. Yeah,
That's amazing. So what about in the early days, but even now, what kind of songwriter, what kind of bass player are you when it comes to songwriting? Like, are you a very, do you kind of bring a part to the group and kind of show it, or like a fully fleshed out idea, or are you more of an explosive player where it's like, that guy's got that, so I'm going to do this and da-da-da-da-da? Like, when it comes to the songwriting stuff, like, how do you, is it a communal thing, or is it one guy leading the pack with the songs? Or?
Yeah, in both bands that I'm in right now with the Hard-Ons and Nunchucka Superfly, it's always Blackie just coming up with everything.
Yeah, right.
Like really, like sometimes he's got all the bass parts all written.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, including if it's like a riff that is written on the bass, you need to play that, and I'll play it, and he goes, no, you need to play an octave down.
Yeah,
so
right.
He'll specify that I'm playing it too high.
Yep.
No, you need to play it on the lower octave.
Yeah, right.
He'll be very specific.
Yep.
Because he thinks that will determine how the song sounds.
Yeah.
Which is true. Other times, sometimes but the riff-based songs. Other times he'll come up with something like, here's a melody line, and here are the chords.
Yep.
You play something underneath that.
Yeah, okay.
I go, okay, well, I'll come up with something. So basically, what I do is stick to all the root notes for a while and just Didi Ramon it all the way through.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, now I can just put some more embellishments on.
Yeah, put a bit of spice on it.
But most of the time it's all improvised embellishments. I don't do... I rarely do like bass runs and play them over and over again the same.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because I didn't know that 99% of bass players write bass parts and stick to them. I didn't know. I thought it was all improvised.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I don't know why, but I just thought, it never occurred to me that, I love Kiss and I hear Gene Simmons playing these bass lines, and I'm thinking, shit, that's actually composed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. When we were playing, I'd just be fucking like
so cool.
playing whatever I wanted to. I go. I remember talking to Smiley from the Moths. He was in this band called the Moths, and he was probably the best musician that I knew at the time, and fantastic bass player. And he was so good that his main axe was a Hondo Fender copy.
Okay.
And he sounded amazing, and they were a great band. And he could play piano, play guitar, he could sing. He was a fantastic musician. He was classically trained.
Yep.
And I said to him, listen, mate, I need you to help me with like bass embellishments and stuff.
Yeah.
And I go, so what should I be playing? He says, what key are the songs in? I go, it's that note there. That's the root note.
The third one or whatever.
Okay, that's called the A.
Yeah.
So, look, mate, you can probably do anything you really want to. It all makes sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and years later, 20 years later, I find out that what I was actually playing, they weren't actually miss hits or anything. They were actually. It was actually I was playing a mode.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was actually playing a node, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know? So I was talking to.
It was right. It was right by mistake.
Yeah.
Or by accident.
Well, I was talking to Andrew from Roland's band, who was like a fantastic bass player.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Give me some advice," and he said, what I would do is just play what sounds good." I go,
That's good advice.
"Yeah." I go, "What would that be?" He goes, "Well, that's up to you, isn't it?"
It's personal
Yeah,
interpretation.
If it sounds good, then it's okay. I go, "Should I be going and learning some scales?" He goes, "Nah, don't worry about that.
That's so good.
Yeah, just
Awesome.
just muck around until you find something that sounds good, and just repeat it." And he goes, "This is what I like doing." And he held down the A note, and then he held down the E note, and he goes, "Listen to this." He goes, "I'll go backwards and forwards from A to E all the time." He goes, "Man, I do that all the time." He goes, I go, I might steal that. Do you mind if I steal that? He goes, "I think I've stolen it from someone else myself."
Just playing it forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he said, just play whatever sounds good." I go, "So I don't need to learn scales?" He goes, "Nah. Well, maybe learn a couple and see if it helps, but
Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah." And I went to America in 97 to do a session for a band called Beatnik Termites,
Okay.
pop punk band in Cleveland. Fantastic pop punk band, but very Ramones core. You know what they call Ramones core?
Yep.
Like the Queers and bands like that.
Yep.
Screeching Weasel, and they were that kind of a band. And they were Hard-Ons fans, so the Hard-Ons had broken up, and they paid for me to come over and do a session on their album. I go, "Yeah, I'll do
That's
it."
fucking fantastic.
Oh, it's fantastic. I go,
Yeah.
"Yeah," and gave me really good freaking fly points and everything.
Yep.
And when we were recording, I remember Pat, the singer, saying, "I want you to play something a little bit more poppy, because what you're playing is that's not a major scale." I go, "No, it's pentatonic. It's
Yep.
it's Geezer Butler."
Yeah.
He goes, "Why are you playing that?" I go, "For me, it's juxtaposition of pop against
Yeah. That's
the moodiness
Yep.
of pentatonic. You've asked the hard-on bass player to turn up and do something. Well, that's how I play.
That's what you get.
That's juxtaposition. That's why we play pop music, but we try and make it heavier by playing pentatonic scales
Yep.
in pop songs." He goes, "Well, can you play something major?" I go, "Yeah, I can do that if you want." And so I did it, and I played it, and then we did another take, and then I played it differently, and he said, "Can you come up with a really good bass line and stick to it? Because it's freaking me out."
Kids, you're
And
not
I
doing
go,
the same thing all the
"No,
time.
because it's just the way I was taught myself to play,
The way you're wired, yeah.
And I thought, "Yeah, okay." And then it goes, come back the next day, and then I didn't sit in the room practicing. I just walked in cold and I ripped something out. And Pat said, "Did you go and compose that?" And I go, yeah." He goes, "See, it sounds great when you compose something." I'm there going, I didn't have the heart to tell him. I just made that up on the spot.
No, doesn't need to know
Some
that.
people work really good, like doing things up on the spot,
Yeah.
and other people compose things, and that's what they're
have
good
to
at.
sit down and be
Yeah.
meticulous over it. Yeah.
I'm just not good at sitting down and composing and playing them over and over again.
Yeah.
I just don't do that. It's not because of the way my brain's wired or anything like that. It's just that I just grew up comfortable playing improvised things,
Yeah.
It's a big part of how I like doing things,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I like listening to a lot of jazz music, what they call never again the same time, same next time around music. You know how some people call it never the same the next time around music,
Yep.
I really like that.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what I like,
Yeah.
Yeah, some
'Cause
people
they work on here's the structure.
Yeah,
Go.
yeah, I
Yeah.
really like that. And
Yep.
it's sometimes I think it's really undisciplined. But I've got friends who play jazz who say no, it's actually really disciplined. And,
Yeah, okay.
I just go, well, I don't really know what any of that means. I just have
So
to go back
cool.
to what Andrew Weiss from Rollins Band said. It's like, if it sounds good, just be happy with that.
Just
you
keep
know?
going with
yeah,
it. That's
don't
amazing.
think too much about it. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Okay, so let's talk about gear.
Yes.
What is your live gear setup at the moment?
I have an Ampeg 8x10.
Yep.
Which used to belong to Mark Evans from ACDC.
Okay, yeah. Oh, wow.
So he had 3 Ampeg speakers when he was in ACDC,
Yeah.
and he sold them all, and he kept one, and the one that he kept, it eventually ended up in my hands.
Okay.
When he played with Rose Tattoo a few years ago, I brought it to the gig for him to play through.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so he reunited after all those years. So,
Yep.
but it's you know how Ampeg speakers, those speakers are like they have this ceramic construction.
Oh, yeah.
So this one's from '73, so it's not ceramic. It's stainless steel.
It's that old.
Yes.
Fuck.
So with single input.
Just input, yeah,
Yeah.
just a line.
Yeah.
Not any of the,
That's right.
none of the other shit. Yeah, just one line.
There's
Yeah.
no
No speak on or
no nothing like that.
Yeah.
Just one jacked
Fucking
input.
wild.
Yeah, and it's there's no ceramic component to the speakers. It's actually stainless steel. So it has a different tone to a modern Ampeg speaker box.
Yeah.
So it's really good. It's been I took it to the speaker hospital about back when they were at Ashfield. That would have been about 10 years ago, and they reconed them for me.
Okay. Yeah.
That cost like $2,000.
I was about to say.
I could have bought another one.
You could have brought another one.
Whew. Yeah, so but it sounds really good.
Yeah, good.
And I have 2 bass amps. One is a Fender Bassman 300T,
Okay.
which is I guess it's just a rebadged Sun.
Yeah.
You remember those
Yeah, the
Sun?
Sun amps, yeah.
So they got it's the one with the 6 power tubes
Yep.
in it. So
So that one's relatively modern. Yeah.
I think it's about 30 years old.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
20,
no.
20 to 30 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's I know those Sun amps were really popular at one stage in the 70s.
Yeah.
But from what I've been told, Fender bought them out.
That's why I thought Fender bought them out.
And I think it is about 20 years old, maybe.
Okay.
I bought it off the bass player from the Vines.
Okay.
Yeah, so
right.
so I'm thinking maybe he had a Fender endorsement or something.
Yeah.
I've never asked him, but he sold that to me for $700. So it was a good deal,
Yeah.
and it's seriously it's too loud, like it's
Yeah,
unfeasibly loud,
Yeah.
and it doesn't.
Probably not for what the Vines were doing, like as in their size venues.
Oh, well, they'll be playing stadiums and stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
even then, I mean, man, I've taken that thing out to open air festivals and stuff, and it's just,
It's overkill.
yeah, it's unfeasible.
Yeah.
It's the loudest thing I've ever heard. I mean, it's louder than the Ampeg Classic SVT.
Yeah. Right.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I don't know what makes it so loud, but it's just unfeasible, Also, I have a GK 800RB.
Oh yeah. The classics.
Yeah, so I bought that off Fiona, who is the bass player in Sick Fizz.
Okay.
She was in a band called The Dilemmas a long time ago.
Oh, Sick Fizz is Fox's band.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, not Fox's band, but the band Fox is playing in.
Yeah,
doing
that's
it. Yeah,
right.
yeah. Sorry, I should say that way.
So I bought that off her. I think she's using an Ampeg classic SVT
Yeah.
head, so she didn't need a GK 800RB. But I think GK 800RBs are really great amps. I had one in 1988
Okay.
when I bought one then with two Harkey system. Remember those aluminium
The
cone
aluminium
Harkey
cone
system?
ones, yeah. Yep. They were
But
everywhere.
They were fantastic.
Yeah.
They were really fast reacting speakers.
Yeah.
But I switched over to an Ampeg 8x10 in 2003, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, because I do like the tone of the
Yep.
the 8x10 construction.
Yep.
So that's what I use. But most gigs, I just take the GK. But I have my own preamp to dial in a good
So that's
tone.
that was gonna. Is it? Am I tripping or is it Hughes and Kettner?
Yeah, it's a Hughes Kettner.
Okay.
So what I used to have
But is it bass or is it? Is it
guitar.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I did some research before getting it.
Yeah.
So what used to sound really good was the GK 800RB with a Marshall 9000 preamp rack mount.
Oh
You know?
yeah. Okay.
You know those
yeah,
things?
Yeah.
So I had one of them.
That would have
but-
been fucking unreal.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like we did those Hard-Ons albums from the 90s. It's with that
Just
thing.
that. Okay. Yep.
So that thing's made for guitar, right?
Yep.
But it's versatile enough for bass. So you still get plenty of bottom end.
Yeah.
And I remember taking my rig, which was a rack-mounted 800RB GK with that 1 unit preamp
Yeah. Yep. Single
on
strip.
top. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I took that because this is back in the 90s when airlines used to let you take gear on
Yeah,
the
okay,
planes.
yeah,
I don't think they do that anymore.
Yeah.
Or they charge you now, excess
Yeah,
baggage
true.
or whatever. But yeah, we took that to Europe. We used to have gear in Europe that we used to leave in our booking agent's office. But then I really liked the GK that I had in Germany, so I brought that back with me.
Yeah. Right.
And I took out the one that was in the GK that I had because that'd been fried in Perth. I took it to Perth and I fried it, and it started making. I got it fixed, but it was still like crackling.
Okay.
So I took that out and sold it cheap and put the German GK in there. And then when we had to go back to Germany, I took the whole thing back with the 9000 series amp. And I remember there was a friend of ours traveling with us. His name was Calvin. He was a bass player in a band called Heresy.
Okay.
Like a fantastic band from Nottingham. And they had a really dirty sound, and he was a bass player. And when we were sound checking, he said, "Can I have a go?" I gave him my bass, and he dialed in a sound for my GK through on tour we had a 8x10, and I plugged into the preamp as well as I have a listen. And then so there was like all these different channels you could switch into, and all these different combinations.
Okay.
You can run one channel, first channel or second channel, or the two together,
Or two. Yeah.
and mix them the
Yep.
way you wanted. And I go, have a listen to that, and he goes, "That's the best bass sound I've ever heard."
That's
I go, "Yeah,
awesome.
it's amazing, isn't it? It's just saturated." Just the world collapsing sound, you know.
Yeah.
I really like it.
That's a good way to describe
Yeah, I
it.
do. I
The
really
world
like that
collapsing,
sound.
yeah.
Yeah, because my heroes always had that sound. You know, I really loved the bass player from Venom, Kronos,
Okay. Yeah.
and I also really loved a bass player named Rainey from Discharge.
Okay.
So those two guys both had overdriven sounds.
Yep.
And they weren't tight players.
Yeah. And
So-
then obviously you've got Motorhead sound as well.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
That's not bass. That's guitar. That's rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
it sounds like rhythm. The
Yeah.
way, the timing of his
Yeah.
right hand would suggest that it sounds like
It's
he's
very
playing rhythm guitar parts.
Yep.
You know, and
Interesting
it's not,
observation. Yeah.
It's not. It just doesn't sound like classic bass playing to me.
Yeah.
It's an incredible bass sound,
Yeah.
but I can't really. It didn't really
It didn't click with you. Or
No, because he plays up and down.
Yeah. Oh, of
Yeah,
course.
he plays
yeah,
up.
yeah,
He
yeah.
plays. He's got this easy strumming style about him, and I love Dee Dee from the Ramones.
Yeah.
You know, so I've got a fast right
All
hand downstroke,
Yep.
and I just love the fast and loose, you know, chaotic sound. You know,
Yep.
I'm not a very disciplined player,
So
Joel.
good. Yeah.
But you know, I do like the chaos.
Yep.
But now, you know, that preamp, it's not, it's quite a thing to take on tour overseas. So I was looking for something portable.
Yep.
So I tried out, you know, like a whole bunch of different distortion pedals and preamps.
Okay.
And you know, like, because you can get a decent saturation from a preamp
Yep.
if it has that setting, and the ones that I liked were through, you know, like a little preamp tube.
Yeah, they had the little 12X7s or whatever.
That's
it is.
right.
Yeah.
So the Hughes Kettner one, I went to Melbourne one tour and I saw one in the shop, and it was for guitar, obviously.
Yep.
And then I plugged it in and tried it in the shop, and I thought, this is going to work. I'm pretty sure it's going to work.
There
you know,
go.
because I heard the bottom end coming through.
Yeah.
I go, this is going to work. And I remember the guy in the shop going, are you going to play bass through it? And I go, yeah. It's like, and I thought, I think he thinks I'm a bit of an idiot. He goes, yeah, it's for guitar. And I go, I know what it's for. Mate. But, you know, if I want to ride a motorcycle without a helmet, I will.
Yeah.
It's my private land, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's my choice.
Yeah. So, I started playing that, and it didn't have the versatile the panel of the rack mount Marshall 9000 preamp. It did only a handful of things, but it's all I really wanted.
It did it well.
Yeah. And so plenty of bottom end, even though it's starting to distort, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been using ever since.
It's obviously a lot more
2002.
convenient than having to take that rack mounted preamp somewhere.
Yeah. So
wherever you're traveling.
And I remember reading about that Hughes Kettner pedal.
Yep.
The whole idea was that they miniaturize a lot of parts so that you didn't have to have a rack mount.
Yeah.
But it was going to sound as good as a rack mount, right?
Yeah, cool.
So what they were saying was, we've taken the absolute sheer power and saturation from a rack mount preamp
Yep.
and put it into a convenient
A compact
guitar pedal form
Yeah.
for you that you can just carry around.
Yep.
And so I don't even, when I travel, I don't even put that preamp in my luggage. I put it in a plastic bag and carry it on the plane with me.
That's so cool.
Well, because they're very fragile.
Yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
valve in it's not going to
Yeah.
travel great. getting knocked around.
Even inside a padded flight case.
Yeah.
I just go, I don't want anyone to throw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
and you never know
Because
what you're going to get.
Even
Yeah.
if he flies through the air and lands, that little valve at some point is going to stop suddenly.
Yeah,
and
they're pretty finicky, aren't
Yeah,
they?
I'll just, and I did take it to USA once.
Yep.
And I had to. It was out for the whole tour. So
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I had it in check luggage.
Yeah.
And it stopped and it didn't work. So I had to quickly buy an alternative pedal when I was over there. I can't remember what it was called, but it wasn't as good.
Yeah.
But now I learnt my lesson, so I just take that I put it inside a plastic bag and I just carry it on the plane with me.
There you
And
go.
I keep it in, and I always take it out of my backpack, because if I leave it in the backpack and it goes through
Against
the X-ray machine,
yeah.
they look at it and they think it's something really dodgy.
They probably freak you out.
Yeah. They go, "What is this?" I go, well, it's a guitar pedal. They go, "Oh, okay, it can go through." But yeah, it looks really weird in the X-ray machine. I've seen it. It's got all these like wires and stuff, and
That's
you know,
cool.
yeah. But it's a fantastic little pedal.
Amazing. So one of the questions I have, but you've already kind of given it, the most memorable advice you've ever been given. Was obviously, it would have to be from Andrew. Andrew Weiss, yeah?
Yeah, it would have been. Well, I think Andrew is an exceptional bass player, because I don't think he could play with punk power, but he wasn't a punk bass player. He told me that his favorite bass players were people like Billy from Funkadelic and people like that, you know, and Larry Graham from Sly and the Family Stone. They were his favorite players.
Yeah.
And he told me that he learned to play bass by constantly listening to his favorite records. And
Wow.
He would always be fooling around on the bass, trying different things, and I found him really inspirational. I thought he was an incredible bass player.
Yeah.
But he'd always encouraged me to look for my own sound, you know. He'd say, just keep playing until you find something that sounds good and see if you can repeat it at the gig, you know.
It's such a simple concept.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, don't you know, I think he was trying to encourage me to find something within myself that would determine what was working.
Yep.
And my hero for bass playing when I was really young was a guy named Ian Ryland from X, and he was like one of the original members of Rose Tattoo, and he wrote that song, Rock and Roll Outlaw, for example. Great song. So I saw X play when I was in high school with the other guys in the Hard-Ons.
Yep.
And we hadn't played at that stage. We hadn't played any public gigs. We'd only been playing at parties, and that really fast, sheer power downstroke really killed me. You know, him having all that control over the fret hand. You know, like playing dead notes and stuff.
Yep.
He did a lot of dead notes. You know, like where the note just didn't resonate, but they sound like bullets just being hammered.
Yeah.
And I
scrub it.
And I said to him, "Hey, you know that song, Good on You, Baby?" And he said, "Yeah." I go, "Well, the note goes, it's like it's stuttering. You're playing dead notes. How do you do that?" "What do you mean?" I go, "Well, how do you play dead notes?" And he said, "I do it two ways. The first way is with my right hand, which is my strumming hand.
Yeah.
I use the palm to mute the strings."
Okay.
And I go, "What's the other way?" And he said, "Well, I use my left hand, which is my fret hand, and I deaden the strings by lifting up the fingers at the right rate. So I stop the note from ringing out.
Yeah.
I deaden it with my fingers on my left hand, the fretboard hand." And I looked at him and I said, "What should I do?" And he said, "Just work it out yourself."
Just figure it out.
Yeah, he said, "Mate, you're already halfway there, you know," because by then we'd already played with X and stuff, and he came to see us play, Ian, and he said, "I'm going to give you guys a gig. You know, I like you guys." So he gave us a couple of gigs and stuff, and you know, if I cornered him, I'd ask him like lots of advice.
Yeah.
And his advice that stuck with me. He said, "Just work it out yourself."
That's incredible.
Yeah, he said, "Just work it out yourself." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, mate, you're halfway there. You know, you got the balls to go and form your own band and call it the Hard-Ons, get on stage in front of all these people.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
you've got some gall doing that. You know,
Yep.
you've got some balls. Just work it out. You're halfway." That's what he said. He said, "You're halfway there. Just go and work it out."
It's amazing.
It was pretty good advice.
It's fucking red hot advice. You can't fold it.
That night we played with X. The first night we saw X when we were at school, it was really violent. There was like lots and lots of skinheads and stuff.
Okay.
The first time we played with them, that would have been a year later.
Yeah.
So we saw them in 83. We were at school.
Yep.
And then we played with them in 84. A year later, and all those pretty tough looking skinheads and stuff, though, and punks, like really rough crowd. They were there, and they loved it. You know, we played.
Yeah.
And Ian told me, "Look, you know, your band's good. You know, you've got the balls to go out there and play in front of these people.
Yep.
And do what you do. You call yourselves the Hard-Ons. Because I think it's pretty good, man. You're halfway there. So stop asking me how to play bass. Just do it yourself.
Just work the rest out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other person that I tried to ask for advice was a guy named Mike Watt.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was in a band called Minutemen.
Oh, sorry. I
Okay.
completely blanked on that. Of course he is. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So he was in, when we played with him and met him, he was in a band called Firehose.
Yeah, the post.
Yeah.
Minutemen. Yeah.
So we played with them when we were playing our first show in Italy. It was actually the support band was Firehose.
They were your support band.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was our second tour of Europe, and so we were pulling big crowds.
Yep.
And the support band's Firehose, and I'm there going, my goodness, this is a Minutemen guys, you know.
Yeah.
They're supporting us, and we watched them.
Minutemen were obviously on your radar.
Oh yeah, we knew who they were.
Yep.
They were on SST and stuff, but
Yep.
they obviously DC Boone had passed away,
Yeah.
and they had Firehose going and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I mean, his bass playing was so unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just complete mastery over the fretboard.
Yeah.
And just completely effortless. I mean, just like he was doing it like it was nothing for him.
Yeah.
And I just thought, how can you be that dexterous and powerful? He was like so powerful and so dexterous and complete control over whatever he was doing.
Yep.
Never seen anything like it. And I went up to him and I said, look, man, just wanted to tell you that you're a really great bass player. And he said, look, I'm an idiot. He goes, you don't need to call me that. He goes, I'm just an idiot. He said, you're a bass player. You're a real bass player. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you're good, man.
There you go.
Just take it.
Just take
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
you're good. You're a real bass player. He goes, I'm just an idiot. And I try to figure out what he meant, but I think he was trying to say in his own way that he was very unorthodox and he was very humble about it.
Yeah.
So I thought I was unorthodox because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Not because I wanted to be unorthodox. I just thought that I was not very good, you know?
Yep.
So I was unorthodox because I was, not very good.
Yeah.
So I was just stumbling through this band, you know, early days of the Hard-Ons. And then this guy who was the best bass player I'd ever seen at that time said that, no, like, I rate your bass playing. You're a real bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an idiot. And for him to refer to himself as an idiot, all those years later, I'd think about it and think he was just saying that he was really unorthodox and don't try and follow me, you know?
Yeah. It's like, don't follow me, I'm lost as well kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think what he meant, you know, I took that as do your own thing. So all the really good advice that I've ever been given is just do your own thing, you know? Because there's
you set
infinite...
the standard so high for any response that question's ever going to get.
That's right. There's infinite ways to play really well.
Yep.
Find your own way.
Yep.
You know, we went and saw Firehose play, and so when he broke the E string, so he grabbed the E string with his teeth and ripped it out.
Fuck.
And then he put the other one in, and then he wound it super quick, and then he got his thumb and went doing, and then he tuned it. Didn't even hear the other strings. Didn't even refer to the other strings.
Just knew.
No, he just knew. And then they started shredding, and it was like, geez, he's in tune. So he had it. Obviously, he's got a really good ear as well.
Yeah.
You know, so like a total master. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, I couldn't play like that in a million years.
No, not at all.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, they came into it with, like, thinking that jazz was punk.
Yeah.
And that's how they approach punk rock.
Yeah. But he's kind of right.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's the most, the most violent sound I've ever heard.
Yep.
It's probably from a punk, not from a punk record, but from a jazz record.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of tame jazz records, but when you think about it, there are plenty of tame punk records as well.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, I mean, I don't even know what punk is, because there's so many definitions, right?
It's yeah.
Who's to say?
Yeah, that's it.
Who's got any idea what punk is, really? I mean,
No.
I didn't grow up thinking that a band that would sound like Blink-182 would be considered punk,
Yeah.
but they're a punk band.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm right
No.
because
I think about it all the time.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know what punk is because I think of a lot of punk bands that I used to really like. People go, well, that's not punk, that's post-punk. And I go, well, here I was thinking the whole time that they were a punk band.
Yep.
Like Stranglers, are they a punk band? They don't sound anything like
Yeah.
NoFX.
Yeah. No, that's or Pennywise. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're a punk band, right?
Yep.
Maybe they're not a punk band. Who's to say?
Who's to say?
Yeah, so I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the guitar player from The Damned about punk. I go, well, he was saying that the Hard-Ons were a punk band. He goes, you guys are a real punk band. I was like, define punk.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, there's chaos to your sound. Now this was his definition.
Yeah. Yep.
And he was saying, like, let's talk about some of your all-time favorite punk records. And I go, okay. The Ramones' first record.
Yep.
The Saints' first record. And he was saying to me, well, you know what's great about those records? It's the rhythm, right? The bass sounds like it's actually ahead of the beat. It's rushed.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting.
It's energetic and
Yeah. So it sounds faster than what it actually is because the bass is slightly ahead of the time.
Yeah.
So it's not type music.
Yeah.
If it was right on the money, it'll probably be just rock.
Yeah.
But as it is, it's punk.
Yeah.
That's the chaos of punk. That, the bass, like Dee Dee's rushing ahead of the beat because he's, like juiced up or whatever, but he's like rushing ahead of the beat.
Yeah.
So, and 20 years later, I remember recalling that conversation. I thought, so if the bass player is slightly behind the beat, then does that become stoner rock? Or maybe it does.
Yeah.
Maybe it does, So I remember we did a Hard-Ons record called Most People Are Nicer Than Us. And it was like, there were some really heavy songs on there.
Yeah.
And Blakey said, I've written a stoner rock song for her. I go, well, let's record it. So we recorded it, and he goes, junk, 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 like that Black Sabbath,
Yeah.
Children of the Grave rhythm. And I said to him, I can't play stoner rock. And he said, why not? And I said, well, because I can't play.
I can't hold back.
I can't hold back.
Yeah.
I'll just have to rush ahead.
Yep.
I'm always slightly ahead.
Yep.
I'm knocking on the door before the open sign is on the restaurant.
Yep.
I'm knocking.
Yep.
And he said to me, well, let's have a listen. So we recorded it, and the engineer, John Boy, he said, I've isolated the bass track, and you're ahead of the beat.
Yep.
And he showed me on the monitor. And so he got the cursor, because,
Oh, yeah, because it's digital. Yeah.
and he dragged it back. He goes, see, now we've put it behind here. Let's have a listen. And we're listening to it, and the bass is going behind the beat.
Yep.
And he goes, that still doesn't sound stoner. And I'll go, okay. So he got the cursor and pushed it right back, and the drums and the guitars going, and the bass is going behind it.
Yeah.
He goes, now it sounds stoner, like it's like sinking in quicksand.
Yeah.
It just sounds like, three guys with beards sinking in quicksand, And I said, wow. And he goes, it proves something. I don't play behind the beat. I play way ahead.
Yeah, way ahead of it.
Way ahead.
Yep.
And if I want to be in a stoner band, I'd have to lie to them. I go, yeah, I can play that.
Yep.
I can't.
Yep.
Because I have to play behind.
Yep.
It's not who I am. It's not in me at all.
That's amazing. That's
So-
fucking great.
Yeah, but they to make it sound stoner.
They put it back. So
yeah.
if do you do it live ever? Like, do you play that song?
No,
live?
never.
Okay,
never.
right.
Yeah, never.
So you never have that problem.
No.
Yeah.
That was just for the record.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. So what about to me, your P bass is pretty iconic.
Right.
Is there anything special about it? Is there a story behind it?
Yeah, it's completely stock.
Yep,
right?
okay.
Yeah, 1977.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Yeah, 1977 maple wood neck.
Yep.
Rather than rosewood.
Rosewood. Yeah.
Which supposedly is brighter.
Yep.
What happened was I had a Rickenbacker, a 4000 mono bass.
Yep.
And it got stolen in Italy, and so when we got to Austria, the band bought me a 4001 stereo model.
Okay.
And that thing was great. It was a fantastic bass. It was
What year was this roughly?
91.
Okay. Yep.
And at that stage, it was probably the best bass I'd ever owned.
Yep.
It was fantastic. And we did a session with Captain Sensible in England, and he said, Paul Gray from the Dam plays the bass. I go, yeah, that's probably one of the main reasons why I really like the Rickenbacker.
Yep.
You know, a couple of my favourite bass players played it. Geezer played it. Paul from the Dam played it. Bruce Foxton from the Jam played it. A lot of punk bands from the UK used it.
Okay.
I know I saw photos of X-Ray Specs,
Yep.
the Undertones, and the adverts. All of them had at one stage the Rickenbacker.
Okay.
You know, I thought this is a historically great bass, and
Proven,
so
yeah.
so I bought one and I loved it. It's very easy to play. He said, yeah, but you know, it's not a very versatile bass. It only does one thing really well,
Yep.
which is this mid-range thing that it does. You know, it's very melodic, but it's not always really versatile. You can
Yep.
probably sometimes you can get a heavier sound from a Fender, you know. If you have a Fender Precision, then you can
So
basically do
Captain
anything.
Sensible's saying this to you.
Yeah, he said a Fender Precision tends to do everything really well, you know.
Fuck yeah. Okay.
And another person who said that to me was Rob Younger when we recorded with him. He said, you know, a Fender Precision, when you bring that to a recording, you can ask it ask a lot of questions of it,
Yep.
and it will mainly deliver
Yeah.
on everything. A Rickenbacker will be exceptional at a smaller range of things.
Its job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what he said. But they both said you play what you're comfortable with,
Yep.
because when both of them said the same thing in their role as producer. Pick a bass that you're really comfortable with, and then let's try and pull a great sound out of that.
Yep.
Because if you're comfortable with the way it feels,
Yeah.
then
half the battle.
you'll play really well.
Yeah.
If you're playing really well, that's half the battle of
Yep.
the good tone,
The good
right?
and the good take.
Yeah, because the good take and the good tone is not just the equipment, but also how you play. And
Yep.
you play really well if you're comfortable with the
feeling it,
instrument.
yep.
And I was really comfortable with the Rickenbacker. It felt so good. And then we had this. I had this idea. I'm actually going to do what everyone's been telling me, which is like, if you turn up to a gig with a Fender Precision and you look at the room and it's shaped like in a certain way, the stage is a certain way, the drum riser is this high, the stage is this tall,
Yep.
and the ceiling of the venue is this high, the material around the venue is of this material,
Yeah.
that all affects the sound. When you have a Fender Precision, you're in a better position than any other bass to deal with that condition.
To compensate
Yes.
for it. Yeah.
So take something that's going to be able to take you to hell and back
Yeah.
and do it really well.
Yep.
And I thought, you know what? I did have a Fender at one stage. In 1987, we put out a single called All Set to Go, and that was a Fender Precision, an American one.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and get a Fender Precision again. So I went and bought one from Bankstown again, this time from a shop called Bankstown's Muso Supply and Service.
Yeah. Yep. Another one again. Yep.
Yes.
In the mall.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was Yanni.
Yep. Yep.
He's still there.
That's
but
amazing.
in a different position.
Yeah, yeah.
And he, to this day, I still go there and pick up equipment off him and stuff. And he sold me this Fender bass for $900, and I said, "Will you do any cheaper?" He goes, "I can't because it's on consignment."
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I said, "Ring the guy." He goes, "I'll ring him." He rang him.
What year was this? Sorry, before you on?
92.
Okay,
yeah.
right. So like
Um,
70s basses weren't highly sought after.
No, it was only $900.
Yeah.
So in 1992, a 1977 bass isn't that old.
Yeah,
you know?
that's exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's
It's equivalent of a 2010 bass now.
that's right.
Yeah.
So he said the guy's not moving on the price. I go, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll just pay. So I gave him $900 and I took it home, and I've had it ever since.
Fuck yeah.
But I remember taking it to at one stage I had to get it set up. Every person that's set up that bass for me has said the same thing. This is an exceptional bass.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's completely stock, including the only thing that's not stock is the pickguard.
Okay.
The original pickguard had broken, but the pickups and the bridge and everything is completely stock, and it sounds really good.
I guess moving on.
Mhm.
The Hard-Ons have got a doco out that's kind of been screening.
Yes.
Just quickly, we don't have to go too deep into it, but how did it come about? And what's the future of the rest? What's the future hold for both Nunchucka Superfly and the Hard-Ons?
Well, Jonathan Sakura, who made the Radio Birdman documentary, Descending into the Maelstrom, did a really good job. I don't know if you've seen that documentary about
No.
Radio Birdman, but that's obviously it's a really well-known, legendary Australian band.
Yep.
Some people would say a punk band. They're almost a pre-punk band, you know. When they were around, they didn't even know that punk had existed.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't really exist. And then they were around, and Ramones happened in New York, and Sex Pistols happened. All those bands were happening, and Radio Birdman were already in a band together, you know.
Doing it, yeah.
Same as the Saints, they were already doing it, but they were influenced by things like the Stooges and Velvet Underground and bands that were really underground but really volatile and cutting edge. And so the documentary was about a really important band that was quite volatile. You know, like they only did one album and they broke up, for example. So they burnt very brightly. So there was a story there to tell.
Okay.
And so when you have a band that's that volatile, you know, all 6 members had their say, and I thought it was really well put together.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, who made that documentary, approached us to do it. And we'd known him before anyway. I went to university with his brother Brendan, for example, and Mark, his other brother, had worked at Festival Records where we were signed, and at one stage, and so we knew Jonathan, and he said he wanted to make a documentary, and he wasn't. He thought that the band had something to say to the world other than just the music.
Okay.
And I said, in particular, what? He said,
Yeah.
well, you're from a very unfashionable part of Sydney,
Part of Sydney, yep.
and you've made it clear that that's where you're from. In
Yeah, where
our
it is.
career, we
Yeah.
told people that we're from Punchbowl.
From the get-go, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I said, yeah, well, we did that because it was obvious that from a fashion point of view, we couldn't compete with, because when we started, we were just out of high school, right?
Yep.
So we couldn't really compete with other bands who were very fashionable,
Yeah.
because we're just little kids and we didn't know how to dress like,
Yeah.
you know.
All you knew was what
Yeah.
you had, yeah.
So we thought, use that to our advantage
Yeah.
and tell everyone we're from Punchbowl. You know,
Yeah.
hey, you know, there's a bunch of idiots from the suburbs or whatever.
yeah.
And he said, yes, that's a story. And the other story is that when you first started, the original lineup had 3 different skin colors.
Yep.
So there were some issues there. And the third one is your independence. You never decided to change your name and try and become more successful. You always did everything yourself,
Yep.
including having record covers that actually turned off a lot of people.
Yeah.
And your subject matter, a lot of times it was like, well, you know, it was by design. At one stage, it was a huge thing to be at war with censorship.
Yeah.
It was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
People were getting banned and stuff, you know, like Dead Kennedy's records were being confiscated in Queensland and stuff like that. It was
Was that a flow on from what was happening in the US, or were they doing it here independently? Like, was it a PMRC
it was
light or
totally
Australia
independent.
Okay, yeah, right.
Because in Queensland, they had a very conservative, far right-wing government,
Joe
Bjelke-Petersen,
Yeah.
and he made it like almost a mission to stamp his own moral authority on things,
Yeah.
to really to the detriment of a lot of things, one of which was the arts.
Yep.
And, you know, the whole idea that censorship was going to be this really depressing enemy that we had to kind of fight. And I thought we were in a really good position to fight it.
Yeah.
Already the band was called the Hard-Ons, and we had nothing to lose, so we were just going to run amok. And he thought that was a good story.
Okay.
So we thought, because if it was left up to, for example, me to write about the band and make a documentary about the Hard-Ons, we'd be doing what we're doing now, which is we'd be talking about, well, what gear we used, how we wrote the songs.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really interested in that, because that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
He wanted to make the movie about more social issues and stuff like that. And we said, okay, well, we'll just have to trust you. So that's how it came about, on one person's idea that the band was interesting in many different ways.
Yeah.
So
that's fucking wild.
in terms of what's in the future for the Hard-Ons and Nunchucka Superfly, Nunchucka Superfly has a brand new album recorded, and that's about to come out.
Wow, okay. Where do you do that?
We did that at a place called Parliament Studios with Lachlan Mitchell.
Okay, yeah.
That's in Leichhardt. We did that in October 2023. But it hasn't come out because the Hard-Ons put out a record this year, and Nunchucka Superfly released a record that we recorded back in 1995 with a different lineup.
Okay.
And so that lineup released the record, and we didn't want the new album to be interfering with the promotion of that record, and vice versa.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So now it's coming out. I mean, we recorded it back in October 2023, but we just got it mastered, and it sounds really great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's fucking red hot. So I usually end with 5 rapid fire questions.
Mm-hmm.
So let's quickly go through them. Don't put as much or as little thought and response into it as you need or feel the need.
Yes.
Everyone should listen to who as a bass player?
I would say The Move.
Okay.
Yeah. The Move is a band from Birmingham, the UK, and they started in the mid-'60s, and they ended up becoming ELO.
Right, okay.
But the bass playing on every one of those albums is staggering.
Okay.
It's like, you know, when you talk about, from a bass player's point of view, when you talk about what a bass does, it's the linchpin that has a sense of melody and has a sense of rhythm, and just totally underpins the whole music. Wow. You know, I think that band, a bit like the Beatles, is where the bass player stands up and says, I'm going to throw this song the way I want it to go.
Yeah, right.
You know? And do you know that band Cheap Trick?
Yeah, yep.
You know how phenomenal the bass playing is on there?
Okay.
It's all taken, I reckon, from The Move.
Yeah, right.
Identical bass playing, identical bass tone, and just a complete linchpin bass playing. Like,
amazing.
just the absolute cornerstone, amazing bass playing. That, and each album had a different bass player, but they all were.
Oh, really?
Really great. Ace Kefford on the first album, and then there was a couple of other guys. Trevor Burton played bass on a single. Roy Wood ended up playing bass on the last album. The way I discovered that band, I'd see them on TV every now and then, and I knew they became ELO.
Yeah.
But I asked when in 1991 when we were making a record with Captain Sensible from The Damned, I asked him, "Who's your favorite band?" And he said, "The Move."
Fuck. All right.
So he told me to go and listen to them.
So that was the start of you connecting with that band. With
Yeah,
the Move.
with The
Yeah,
Move.
Right. Okay.
So I went and bought a couple of their records, and I went, I know this bass playing, I know these melodies, and then I went, that's just Cheap Trick.
Yeah.
And you
And
know,
then you check the date.
yeah, the complete melting of sheer power and the forcefulness of the rhythm with gorgeous melodies. You know,
Yeah.
fantastic band.
Fucking hell.
Yes. So that would be my answer.
Incredible. Okay, so a bass line that's so good you wish you wrote it.
Oh, jeez. You know what? There's plenty of good bass lines.
Yep.
But you know what I really love is you know that Black Sabbath song. Actually, you know what? You know the best bass line ever.
Play
is-
it on me.
Oh my God! It's "Ain't No Feeble Bastard" by Discharge. Have you heard that?
No, they were never on my radar. But
Really?
Yeah.
For me, Discharge influenced my bass playing so much.
Okay.
They have a slippery rhythm for the bass. It sounds like sometimes he's rushing so ahead to try and get to the next part of the song before anyone else.
Yeah.
You can hear him sliding.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and he does these slides into the next bit and
next
stuff. Yeah,
bits.
it's amazing. And he's got this distortion that sounds like the world collapsing. That song was on their EP Y.
Okay.
It's called "Ain't No Feeble Bastard," and the song the song starts off with the bass going. It just sounds like a concrete mixer.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's based on an industrial scale. It is unbelievable.
I cannot wait to check it out.
It's unbelievable,
That's so
and it's a lot of punks would name that song as one of the greatest songs ever written in the world of punk.
fuck.
It's so chaotic and violent. It's amazing, and when he goes up an octave at one stage during the song, and it just sounds like doesn't sound like he's gone up an octave. He sounds like he's moved the whole house to accommodate the bass. It's amazing. It's so good. It's amazing.
Fuck yeah. Okay. Did you ever sell or lose anything that you wish you could get back?
Yes, I had a 4001 Rickenbacker bass that I sold to the bass player from a band called the Zambian Goat Herders. They were from Wollongong.
I was about to say, yeah, I thought they were shy, but yeah, that name sounds so
Yeah, they're
familiar.
from
Yeah.
Wollongong. The guitar player from that band now plays in the New Christ.
Okay.
Yeah, Brent. But when I sold it to them, they rang me. I told them it was for sale, and they came to my house to pick it up, all the way from Wollongong, Brent and his bass player. And when the Hard-Ons were doing our 30th anniversary shows in 2014, Brent emailed me and said, when you go to Queensland, the original bass player from Zambian Goat Herders, I can't remember his name, has your 4001 Rickenbacker bass. He can bring it so you can play it at that show.
Fuck, that's pretty cool.
And I said no, because it would just be too heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't give it back.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
it was such a wonderful, beautiful bass that felt like that bass was only made for you and no one
Yeah.
else. It
Yep.
felt really
I
good.
completely get that.
Yes. So when every note on the entire fretboard, when you pressed down the notes, there was no ambivalence. There was no string bars. There was
Yep.
none of this. Is that too high? Is that too low? Is that gonna buzz? I think that action's too low.
Yeah.
You never thought that. You always thought it was always absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And then you plugged it in, and then you hit that note. It just sounded like all this, and it was great for punk music because it has plenty of mid-range power. It's
Yep.
and it was neck through body construction.
Yeah.
So it was, even though Rickenbackers aren't known for sustain like a Fender that goes forever.
Yeah.
It just sounded so perfect, Yeah. And if you tuned your amp a certain way, you could hit the strings cleanly, and it would sound more like a piano than a bass.
I get that. I completely get that.
It was the notes were so beautiful and vibrant.
Yeah.
It was so great. It wasn't, you know what it wasn't good at? Once the strings started to sound old,
dull. Yeah.
It was like, oh, I got to change these strings.
Yeah, right.
So you always wanted to be on top of it constantly by
Yep.
having new strings. So it was,
Which isn't cheap.
well, those the strings that sounded really great on that bass were stainless steel wound roto sounds.
Okay. Yeah.
So not
right.
nickel wound, but stainless steel wound. You know how bright they are, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, on a Fender Precision, the frets are made out of stainless steel.
Yeah.
On a Rickenbacker, they're made from, I believe, steel with nickel coating
Okay.
and nickel softer. But I think that's part of their sound.
Yep.
To have nickel frets.
Frets. Yeah.
But so if you've got a really hard thing like stainless steel, round wound rotor sound, regular gauge,
Yeah.
and then you push that against
It
a softer thing,
It chews it up.
yeah. So
Yeah.
4 months into a tour,
Yep.
you're going, I think I'm going to need a fret job.
Yeah.
So it was
Which isn't
constant maintenance.
Yeah. Yep.
So all of a sudden you go, well, because in your band you're always playing that E note on the A string,
Yep.
or the A note on the A string, or the D note on the A string,
yeah.
or those common notes that you love playing.
Yep.
The G note on the E string, and then you look at how it's worn.
Yeah.
You just go, well, at some point this is gonna just drop dead, and then of course halfway through a tour you'll get these notes and you're like, I can't hear that anymore.
Yeah.
It's
just
dead.
Yeah. It's gone.
Yeah. So that was to me that was one of the pains of having a Rickenbacker bass.
Yep.
But when you got brand new rotor sounds, good frets.
Yeah.
And then you hit that note, you just go, wow,
This is the one.
yeah, you're all of a sudden, in with a considerably beautiful instrument,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I wish I didn't sell it.
Yeah. Well, it's never too late. At least you know where it is.
Yeah, but the thing
Like-
is, that particular model was so compliant. It
Yep.
felt so good. And all Rickenbackers feel different, right?
Yeah.
And have you seen what they go for?
Yeah. Well, so I used to own I owned a Japanese, like a Greco-made Japanese copy.
They're fantastic, right?
I didn't love it.
Right.
But
right.
in my soul, I was like, you have to own one
Yeah.
to love it or not love it,
Yeah.
to then move on from
Yeah.
this thing that's been lingering over you for the last
Yeah.
20
Otherwise,
20
it'll
years.
Otherwise, it'll bug you, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it constantly did. And one
Yeah.
came up at a decent price and went,
Yeah.
I'll jump on it.
Yeah.
And I went, I want to love this so much.
Yeah.
But I can't. But then the sucker in me thinks, maybe it was just that one.
Yeah.
Maybe the next one I play is
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
you know,
All bases are totally different,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I bought. Do you remember about 2007 or so? I think it was around 2007 when the Australian dollar was at parity, with the US dollar.
Yeah, yeah.
I went on eBay and bought a Rickenbacker brand new one
yeah.
with the shrink wrap over the scratch plate and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
That was in 2007, and that cost me $1,700
Jesus.
for a brand new Rickenbacker
Yep.
4001 model. It was like jet glow blue, beautiful.
Yep.
And I took it and I started playing. I went, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It didn't feel the
Yeah.
same.
It's not
Yeah.
what you remember.
No, it didn't feel the same.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Last but not least, what is your go-to bass line whenever you pick up a bass? Now, this can be for sound check or to get a sound when you're recording or just fucking around.
Yeah.
What's the first
yeah.
thing that you usually play?
I have two.
Okay.
One is the bass solo to NIB, the first
Yeah,
bass solo album. It's
Yep.
just a pentatonic.
Yep.
He just, he just walks down a dark alley with it. It's quite menacing.
Yes.
It's just basically A to C and then D, E.
Yep.
Look, I I like playing that one, and I also play Supernaut from Volume 4 by Black Sabbath.
Yep.
You know, I play that one.
Yep.
Which is again just basically pentatonic.
Pentatonic. Yeah.
And I also play Sure Know Something by Kiss as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is basically just pentatonic.
You're a simple man.
Yeah, yeah. But
awesome.
they just just stick to the dots on the fretboard, right?
Yep.
That'll
No,
work for you.
That's
Yeah.
true. And the last one, what is your favourite part about being a bass player in a punk band?
Oh, I think we've I don't think we're a true punk band in a sense, but we're getting a bit esoteric now. But I just love the fact that it's like what Paul McCartney said. You're basically the person that throws the band the way you want it to go, rhythmic, because it's you're that fulcrum that sits right between rhythm and melody.
Yep.
So you get to be what they call kingmaker for the song a lot of the times.
Yep.
You know, if you start playing a line away from the root note back. That's what Paul McCartney did, and he said, "Look, you can throw in a counter melody, so the song would be going like this on the melody. But if you start playing away from the root note and bounce around until you find a melody on the bass line that's different to the singing, then all of a sudden you make the song go a different way, and all of a sudden it grows another dimension.
Yep.
So I do love that about playing the bass,
Fuck
you know, and also it's also rhythmically speaking, you can play two parts at the same time. So if you, especially all the bands I play in, there's no second guitar player.
Yep.
So I remember reading interviews with people like Lemmy, John Entwistle from
The Who.
The Who.
Yep.
The bass player from Dinosaur Jr. So
Lou Barlow.
yeah, I think that's his name. Well, I saw him play, and a lot of times they had a fair bit of saturation live.
Yep.
And when they locked in with rhythm guitar, it made it sound huge. And in fact, what they were actually doing was playing bass and rhythm guitar parts at the same time. And so some of those guys, I mean, I read that John Whistle would play clean on the records, but in the studio live, he would play with saturation.
Yeah, it was monstrous sounding. Yeah.
So it was distorted.
Yeah.
It was grunty.
Yeah.
So that was to compete with Pete, who was loud, and also if he wanted to, he could slip in parts that sound like rhythm guitar.
Yeah, to fill it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, it doesn't sound like three people.
Yep.
It sounds like four people
Sounds
on
like an
stage.
army. Yeah.
Sounds great. And so to try and make it to sound bigger with the small amount of people you have.
Yep.
And don't forget, if you like, I don't know about you, but I like playing three people without a second guitar player, because when you have a table and it's got four legs, every now and then one's wonky.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
But when you have a stool and it's only got three legs, it'll never topple.
Perfect analogy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here's the problem: if you're a bass player in a three-piece band, you can't hide.
Yeah. Well, that's
If you're a bass player in a four-piece band, the rhythm guitar player can maybe hide your deficiency if you're not pulling your weight.
Yep.
But if you're playing heavy music, man, you'd want to be up there, you know, up and contributing.
Yep.
And all I'm saying is, if you don't have a rhythm guitar player, you've just got the lead guitar player and the bass player.
Yep.
You're obliged. You can't hide, so you're obliged to really put your good foot forward.
Yep.
And that's what I love about bass playing.
That's fucking
being
incredible.
Forced to be contributing, a heavy contributor to your band.
Yep.
And you know, and it really makes sense in a punk band because it's heavy music.
Yep.
In a heavy band, and I've always thought about this. I'm going to play the rhythm guitar part and the bass player part at the same time.
Yep.
So now it just sounds bigger than what it should be, you know? Well, that's a theory. I don't know whether it works, but you've already told me, mate, you're the loudest band I ever heard.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a reason why.
Yeah.
You know, you want it to be big, and so the bass player has to contribute to that, you know? That's what I love about it.
That's incredible. Mate, thank you very much for giving me your time.
Oh, no worries,
That's
Joel.
fucking unreal.
I love talking to you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you.